1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back to Wake and Snake. We've had a little hiatus due to some scheduling issues, and then last week going deep into the weeds of updates of all the NFL teams' preseason and training camps. But we are back for what very well could be our last Wake and Snake of the offseason. We will see what next week brings. Obviously, at oneweekseason.com, we are heavily focused DFS site. We will be locked in for week one next week. If any of you are unfamiliar with us, check us out next week. 1 week season, everything free week one. You get access to all of our content week one. That is kind of a yearly tradition. Let people get some eyes on the product and see what we're all about. Hopefully bring home some hardware to kick off the 2025 NFL season. But with all of that said, August 26th, all of the NFL preseason is done. The next time we see live NFL football, it will be real bullets flying next Thursday night with the Eagles hoisting their banner. So we have 9 days left to draft these best ball teams. And then we get to sit back and watch ourselves rise up the standings throughout the year. So with that said, I will bring in my esteemed co-hosts, multiple this week. Got a crying child in the background here. We'll kick it over to my co-host, Billy Gabelman, StatATL, Steve, Maximus, and we're all drafting together. What do we have? Do we have some other OWS pennants in there with us this week?
I don't recognize anyone other than the three of us, to be candid.
All right, good. I enjoy drafting with our, with our subs and whatnot, but also sometimes we've had where it's like 6 or 7 of us and we're all trying to do very similar things. So don't mind it when it's less either. So we've got all 3 of us here. You can see for the viewers, I drew the 1 slot. Jamar Chase in the first round. Stat drew the number 8 slot. Took Nico Collins and then just now Chase Brown. And Steve started off with Brian Thomas, A.J. Brown, locking into those wide receivers early. So, how's it going, guys? I guess we'll start with you, Steve. Where are you at on your drafts, on drafters? How deep are you in? How many do you have left? And are you in zombie mode yet? I feel like around this time I start to get like it's like I'm overdosing on drafts or something. Where are you at? How are things going for you? What are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, based on just the 3 of us in the room, I think our OWS family may be fading down the stretch here. No, I'm good. I'm still, I'm at 125, so I have 25 left in the main. That's been my focus from the start, is just maxing out the main contest that Drafters is offering. Clearly, I think it's pretty confident in saying there's going to be overlay, which is always a good thing if you are maxing out a contest like this. And look, I'm happy to be with you guys drafting down the stretch here.
Yeah, right there along with you, Steve. I think this is draft 124 for me, so right in line. I know Mike's over 100 himself, so I think it'll be a busy last 8 or 9 days. I think all 3 of us intend on trying to max the $20 here, and it's been really interesting. I've enjoyed kind of watching a lot of the shifting of ADP. It's something that we've been tracking, and I feel like I love looking back at the teams that we drafted on stream or whatnot back in April and May and June, and how different they look comparatively. So I think it's interesting. I may leave George Kittle for you, Max. Maximus, we'll see.
Don't know if I'll take him there, but I do have portfolio-wise plenty of Kittle. But thank you for the sentiment.
Yeah. I'm probably going to build a onesies here to dominate the onesies.
So very nice.
we'll just decide if we're going to go Allen or Kittle here. I think I'll go wide receiver later, or tight end later. That'll work. I don't have this start yet. A Nico, Chase Brown, Josh Allen start, which is easily referenceable for those of you OWS subscribers who are tuning in. Since I created it, I'm a big advocate of the drafters tracking sheet. If we do a Awaken Snake next week, we'll have it pulled up on screen, kind of show you how I utilize it kind of live and in real time. It's really a great way to, make sure that you're not drafting the same teams. I think we all have leans or favorites of guys that we like in certain ranges. So to try not to continue to keep clicking the same names and building similar rosters over and over again, I find it to be a super helpful tool.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because, I didn't look it up specifically on my tracking sheet, which Billy, you did a great job on just kind of making that, first of all, putting out all the instructions so all our subscribers kind of can figure it out. It's kind of foolproof. But then just the ease of it where you can kind of quickly see, some big picture, what things look like. That is the big thing with the drafters, the cumulative scoring format. It's not necessarily a terrible thing in playoff style formats to draft essentially the same team or have very similar teams multiple times, because they're each going to have to go through their own path, right? They have their own pod the first round. They're going to you have the issues of pod luck in week 15 and 16. So, you don't necessarily, I built this great team, but I want to stray from it because, whatever reason. But in the cumulative scoring format, you want as many kind of unique paths to the top as you can get. So kind of in that light, like I said, I didn't look up mine, but that's why I took Mike Evans there. He's basically been a late third, sometimes early fourth round pick throughout the draft cycle. And now, I'm on the clock. Look at that. And now he is, he's gone up a little bit to like the mid third round, but he never has been a guy who's available at the end of the fourth round. And he really, even as he's bumped up, he's never really been like his ADP even now with the Godwin and McMillan stuff is still only 32. So like there's not going to be that many rosters with him and Chase on it, I would think. And I know I probably don't have any. And JSN probably kind of fits that as well. So I kind of like that idea too of, especially if you're going to go wide receiver heavy like I have here, Evans and JSN probably are on a decent number of rosters together, like at that 3-4 turn. But probably very, very rare to have those two with Chase. And then from there can kind of differentiate, and that's where your tracking sheet really comes in handy. With all of that said, since I know you guys are thinking through your things on the turn here, a lot to talk about. One of the things, San Francisco 49ers, Ricky Pearsall just went off the board right before your pick, Stat. But 49ers, the Jawan Jennings situation, there's been rumors he could end up on IR to start the season. Still kind of like a game of chicken. Like Kyle Shanahan's comments are like, he should be out there. He's healthy. That sort of thing, kind of throwing him under the bus without directly doing it. But then there's these rumors he could end up on IR. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We saw Terry McLaurin get his money. But Jennings kind of been a journeyman. It'll just be a very interesting situation. Then we had Demarcus Robinson. That DUI suspension came through, going to miss 3 games to start the season. So there's a lot going on at the wide receiver position, I guess. Are there specific guys that are standing out to either of you? I'll let each of you go through it. Kind of in this mid-round, how are you approaching some of those guys? And are there specific guys that you're targeting or that you're kind of shying away from at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage, and I know, on the site, which oneweekseason.com, which is free for everyone week one. I know Mike, I know you and I think JM and Hilo are going to kind of have our guys, articles of kind of 2 or 3 guys at each position that we, really seem to like. And I think just looking at yours and Hilo's as well, I think we all did a pretty good job of picking some guys that are like early on and some mid-round guys. It's not just, hey, I really like Jamar Chase. Okay, great. But I think in this mid-range, like, I really like the tracking sheet to make sure that I'm not honing in on guys, but I feel like Ricky Pearsall's a guy that early on in the drafting season I wasn't as high on. And more recently, even though his ADP has risen, I do find myself, like, if he had fallen one spot to 56 there instead of 55, I would have taken him. He's a guy that I feel like I've seen rise a good bit, and I've been higher on. I think a big riser, actually at a running back position that I feel like I'm not taking any of right now, is JCM, just because I have like a good percentage of him, like all in like the 20th round, and now he's frequently going in like the 8th round, and that just seems like such a huge rise. I feel like there's other guys in that range that I'm slightly underexposed to that I'd just rather take than, 120 jump in ADP. Maximus, sorry to get you off track a little bit. I think Mike was asking about wide receivers he likes in that kind of in that mid 4, 5, 6 range.
No, but that's a good point. I mean, if you had players that you kind of were a visionary, kind of saw ahead of time that can maybe be a contributor later in the season, and then all of a sudden the news changed. Give me a second here. I'm on the clock. Let's do Jalen. That's a good shout, actually, because I was not so much on that guy. I was taking him at like the 155 pick range a few times, Bill Merritt. And from that point onward, he has dipped all the way until like where it's, non-value town. But as far as the receivers go, we were just talking about this off the air. I kind of asked you guys, what's your exposure on Ricky Pearsall right now? And, you look at that 49ers room. I mean, Kyle Shanahan did come out the other day and say he expects Juwan Jennings to be available for week 1, but fact remains he wanted a contract. He had a calf issue. He hasn't been practicing. Demarcus Robinson, like Mike mentioned, is suspended. Brandon Ayuk is at least week 6, could be longer. I mean, it's almost like a de facto great cumulative volume situation to draft somebody like Pearsall at this point with the actionable information that we have. And plus the 49ers, still a good team, definitely have a light schedule because of their record last year. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy that I've revved up targeting just based on the conditions and the information. Man.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through there, and that's where there's like a fine line, I think, between kind of being scared off some of these risers, and then also like from the start, my very first training session for our subscribers back in May essentially talked about my draft plan and how I was going to approach things, and a lot of it focused on pushing as many drafts as I could back into August and kind of into this time period. I still have, obviously it's 150 drafts. I have 48 left after this one. So that's kind of been like my approach and my thought process. And like, we're at the point now where do I I don't want to overthink some of these things and give up the value of that information, that extra information that we have this close to the season, just from the standpoint of, sunk cost. Like, oh, I missed him when he was cheap, especially in the cumulative scoring format. I think that, if it comes down to some of these guys, so like JCM or Bill is a good example, because he's a guy that there's still so much uncertainty around him, and he's kind of being overhyped, I would say, over pushed, where like he's going before B-Rob was going like a month ago, which doesn't really make sense because we don't even know he's for sure like the starter, that he'll have a 50% snap touch share, that sort of thing. But there's some other guys who have risen a bunch where sorry, my kid's moving some chairs. There's some other guys who they move around or they move up, but because so many people don't want to chase them up the board, they don't move up as much as they should. It's like Emeka Egbuka right now, possibly Ricky Pearsall. Those are guys who have risen, but like the information we have and what their likely role and workload and ceiling on a weekly and season-long basis is probably is higher than where they're going. So there's still a value. So I think each individual situation kind of has to be evaluated. But, I think sometimes people just go, oh, I didn't get him when he was cheap, too late. And I think you got to look at it with a little more nuance than that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I specifically remember us having a very similar conversation around like Taj Brooks, like a guy who is more than likely the very clear like backup in Cincinnati as they cut Zach Moss. And obviously Samaje Perine is still there. But for a guy that was like consistently going in the 19th or 20th round, like that news only really made him rise to like the 16th or 17th round. But when you go and you look at other, backups with strong upside on good offenses, these are guys going in the 13th, 14th, even sometimes earlier, 10th, 11th, 12th rounds. And I feel like it's just because people have this anchoring where they said, okay, well, Taj Brooks is a 20th round pick. He's not the starter. He's just now not likely the third or fourth string. He's probably the backup running back. Well, we don't need to bring him all the way up. Like he's a guy that I feel like I find myself clicking a ton in the 16th, 17th round because I feel like he's a guy who should be a 13th or 14th round pick, maybe even earlier. But again, it's just that anchoring. People think that this is where he's gone and this is where he should go.
Shout out Big Draft Energy. I know a regular drafters, he's always live streaming, very active out here. Some awesome content he has, great for the drafters community, really. So good to have you watching. I know he's a big fan of yours, Billy. He gave you a little shout out there. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but yeah. So good to have him watching as always. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple things there. One is like a guy rising 40 spots from pick 210 to 170. That's probably not as big of a deal as a guy rising from pick 100 to pick 88.
Exactly.
Even 12 spots. Yeah, exactly. Who are the guys that you're passing? We've talked about this multiple times, kind of behind the paywall, and I think maybe on here at some point as well. But yeah, you got to kind of differentiate and kind of be aware of, what are you really afraid of? Because all those guys later in drafts are, for all intents and purposes, pretty similar. A lot of times, like 150 on, like it's not really that big of a difference. But like JCM, for instance, like he was undrafted for a long time. Then once he got most of my times that I ended up clicking him was when he was going in that like 15th to 18th round range, where like people were kind of talking him up, but like he, the B-Rob, that he might get traded hadn't dropped and stuff. That was when the train really took off. So when we had like some smoke, but it wasn't out of hand. I haven't taken him since, but it's not because I didn't get him cheaper earlier. It's because I don't think he's an 8th round pick. So again, kind of thinking through those situations is key. Let's see, who else do we have here that we can dig in on?
One of my favorite strategies from last year, I haven't been doing as much this year, is kind of doubling up a backfield. This is probably the first time in a long time that I double up the Cleveland backfield, and a little bit of that is, you're taking on some risk here, even because we really don't know what Bashan Tootin is going to be either. So part of this could work out strong if Tootin is the 3 and it's a lot of Etienne and Bigsby, or Etienne or Bigsby could be traded. So we'll kind of see, but I feel like it's an option to kind of grab a silo. Steve, go ahead. Sorry, Mike, you had asked a question. If not, it looks like BDE asked a question. Yeah,
is Deontay Johnson being released? Best case scenario if he signs somewhere else. Yeah, he's being released. It was Schefter tweeted it this morning. Deontay Johnson will be released by the Browns. So kind of low key, really positive outlook for, I would say, for Harold Fannin Jr., the rookie tight end, who's kind of been, he's another guy who, he's getting all this, positive glow. The Browns, we don't know what their season looks like. Everyone's focused on that quarterback situation, but at the same time, like, David Njoku is kind of a veteran. If they have a bad season, like, do they trade him near the deadline, and is Fannin like a second half type hero? And just in any regard, I think looking at their wide receiver room, probably going to be a lot more 2 tight end sets. And that was probably preempted with, well, frankly, with Deontay Johnson's history and how he's kind of acted in some places. My guess is that the Browns saw the writing on the wall. They're going to use a lot of 2 tight end sets, and that Johnson's probably not going to handle that well. So, yeah, I think signing somewhere else is probably best case for him. I still am not very interested, but there are some situations, the 49ers come to mind, the Vikings with Jordan Addison out to start the year. It could be interesting kind of where that all lands. Speaking of the Vikings, been some rumors around them, potentially Adam Thielen making a reunion there, which would fit nicely as like a 3rd wide receiver when they're at full strength. He can play that part-time role, but also with Addison out to start the year. And then if him or Jefferson ever misses a game or 2 at some point, I don't think he's a guy you want as your wide receiver 1 or 2 for like the whole season if you're a contender. But, you can kind of get away with it for a little while when he is, for a couple weeks, just that veteran kind of savvy, probably be a nice little security blanket for JJ McCarthy as well. I think it'll be interesting what happens with Johnson, but I think teams are going to tread really lightly just because of how last season went for him. Yeah.
But he is interesting. There are worse. He's not a guy that I'm personally gravitating to. I know we try not to get too player takey, but I mean there are certainly worse 20th round picks. He's typically available in the 20th. Similar to like an Amari Cooper. Like Amari Cooper is still likely available in 19th, 20th rounds. Another recent signing by the Raiders, I think just yesterday. He's just not a guy that I personally am gravitating towards clicking, but there are worse clicks in the 20th round.
Yeah, Mike, I have a question for you. Was O'Connell there at Minnesota when Thielen was still with Minnesota? I don't think so.
Don't believe so. There may have been
Thielen,
1 year of overlap.
Billy sniping me.
3, 4, 5.
Buddy, I'm drafting my own team here. I'm still annoyed at you for taking Kittle in the 4th.
Well, he dropped to me.
He didn't really drop. Like, you took Pickens in the 3rd. Pickens would have been there for you in the 4th if you had taken Kittle in the 3rd.
I'm surprised he was still there, actually.
Yeah, so O'Connell's first year there was Thielen's last year. I think
Okay, they have some overlap.
Well, a little familiarity then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they can make the money work with Thielen. Obviously, very familiar with the Vikings. He's a complete, put your finger in the dam until Addison comes back to help out the Vikings early on. Probably a good security blanket for somebody like J.J. McCarthy. So yeah, it'll be interesting what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they're so, and it's all just rumors at this point, but I think the fact that there are a lot of rumors swirling around it, I think doesn't bode super well for Jordan Naylor, who's a guy that I have some decent exposure to really late. I feel like if this was just a 3-week thing, so Jordan Naylor out, I think they're calling it week to week with a hand injury. I think that if he was only going to likely miss 1 or 2 weeks and Addison just a 3-week suspension, I don't think they'd be pushing, so hard to try to shore up that wide receiver room. It's kind of hard to say. I think if they go out and they do make a bit of I don't want to call it a splash, but they sign someone like a Thielen, I think that kind of speaks a little negatively towards Jordan Naylor's injury. I think if that's the case, like if they go and sign Adam Thielen, I think that really speaks to maybe Jordan Naylor's injury, keeping him out more than just a week or two. If it was short, because they really love Jordan Naylor. It's a guy that
Jalen Naylor.
Jalen Naylor.
Yeah. Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. There's so many Jalens and Jordans and Jadens in the league. It's hard to keep all the J's straight. I don't disagree with that at all. We'll kind of find out. Oh, I'm on the clock here. What else?
Speaking of Jalen and Jordan, my team's littered with them. So Billy, almost right on cue, you were mentioning your running backs getting from the same team. And that's actually what I just did with Spears. I have Pollard earlier on, and Spears has a high ankle sprain at the moment, but I still think he's somebody that is going to be, or at least they want to utilize him for a good portion of the season as a 1A, 1B with Pollard. And I know Mike's done some write-ups about this strategy of getting the whole backfield and kind of having that team's backfield kind of nailed down, and there's definitely some strategic significance to that in this kind of format.
And the thing that's interesting about it is that one in particular, Spears. Like there's such a drop off, and we'll see. Maybe they add a different running back. I kind of thought there was a chance they'd add Brian Robinson. They didn't. Again, what they do might kind of telegraph some things with Spears. But in general, the thought process and approach coming in was like, okay, they're probably going to split things like a 60-40 type thing. But there's such a drop once you lose Spears to that next guy that Pollard's probably going to enter the season as a workhorse, right? And if he does that, he's going to have some really, really good weeks early in the season. But then Spears, he drops in his ADP where he's, very cheap to attain. And it's not hard to imagine a scenario where somewhere down the second half of the season, maybe Pollard misses a couple games and Spears has some spike weeks, or just Spears' archetype is such that there's going to be a lot of weeks where he might get 8 to 11 touches and like you'd never start him in your season long league. But he had a couple games last year where he scored 20, 23 points. Where on best ball, you benefit from all of that, you benefit from, you don't have to be right or to know ahead of time, like to have that volume projection to where you feel comfortable starting him. We had this question from very early copy paste states asks, I'll throw it to you guys. What are your favorite draft spots to pull? We'll start with you, Steve.
Well, I think it's become 9 and 10 because I get it so much. I was joking, or numerous times when we've been talking throughout the cycle. For some bizarre reason, I get these spots on this tournament quite a bit, but now I'm kind of, starting to ease into them. Give me a second. We'll get some Diami. Really riding hard this Jaguars offense on this particular team, but yeah, I mean, and of course your bookends at 12 when you get 2 picks in a row. Those are great spots. I mean, you're missing out on the on paper top 3 receivers when you're drafting later on. But although Jefferson's been dropping because of the hamstring issue later than you would expect him to. But yeah, it's always good to have one when you can get somebody like Chase and just have it come right out of the gate, in a good spot. But the 12, the 10, I mean, the dominate the onesies strategy that we've talked about can be utilized in kind of that area. And so, yeah, for me, those are a couple spots at this point I don't mind. I've kind of been forced to embrace it.
What about you, Billy?
Not because I've been getting it a ton. I mean, I feel like I'm probably getting it as much as, standard. I prefer 11 or 12. Like, certainly more recently with Puka Nakua's kind of slide a little bit. And it's not a big slide, but if we look at this a month or two ago, and I think that's around the uncertainty with Stafford. But a month ago, Puka Nacua was basically the 8-9 ADP, pretty consistently, like 7, 8, 9. And now he pretty frequently, like in our draft, he went at 15. Like he pretty frequently falls into the second round. And I feel like if you can, and I have a proficiency for like loving wide receivers early on. Like I feel like if you can start a draft with 2 of like Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, like if you can get 2 with Puka and another like theoretically elite wide receiver, like to me, I love having those type of starts.
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent. I'm fine kind of drafting from wherever, and I just kind of adjust to whatever's falling to me. Try to take emotion out of it and just see the board where it comes. I mean, and I'm talking about it in this week's the final training session, but we get a sick kid here.
Hi, William.
But yeah, we're gonna let there's so much luck that comes in at the top of those drafts. Like all these players in the first 2 or 3 rounds, they are generally speaking capable of like being top 3 or 4 at their position if things break right. You look at CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 1 2 years ago. Well, the Cowboys, they abandoned ship and went super pass heavy, which was the opposite of what they talked about all offseason. And he became like dominant, the wide receiver 1. Last year, the Bengals defense was atrocious. Chase stayed healthy all season. Burrow's wrist came back, was fully healthy. So like everything came together. He dominated. So you kind of need some positive luck. And a lot of times the guys who go at the top. Now I do think the Bengals defense probably is going to be atrocious again this year. And their line is not great either. So they're not going to be able to run the ball. So Chase probably has as good a chance as anyone to repeat. But in general, like, a lot of times those top guys, people are just kind of assuming one year will play out the same as the next. And as we know, 1 week season, we do our DFS, our weekly stuff. But like week 9 or 10, we'll be talking about some of these teams and players in very different lights than what we are now. So, I'm kind of all over the board with it. And that's why a lot of my focus is on structural and roster construction, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think just unrelated to just player takes and, great question there, copy paste dates. Always good for just getting away from us just talking players for 90 straight minutes or an hour, or I think we're only 35 this time. It's moving pretty quick, this draft. I think that you'll start to see, and this is not a great example because, well, actually, I think Seneca is this way, and maybe Jimmy Woods, like it's their very first draft in the $20. The guys in the 10 hole and the 11 hole. The guy in the 12 holes only got 13. The guy in the 5 holes got 7. Like there's 5 guys in this lobby with us in this room that have less than 10 drafts. The 4, the 5, the 10, 11. You know what I mean? Like you're starting to see a lot of fresh names. You're getting more casuals, people who haven't been drafting all off season. And so I think that's just kind of something to be conscious of when you're in a draft room that has a lot of newer faces. You may see some things that are quote unquote abnormal. Oh yeah, I mean, I've just been drafting all summer and this is how the flow typically goes. When you get a room that's got half and this one honestly ended up being totally fine. Like we didn't see anything really off the board or crazy, but I think that's just kind of something to be aware of.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off here, Steve. I wanted to throw something out to you.
I'm sharing the screen, so.
Yeah. I wanted to throw something out to you guys. So with my last 3 picks, so I took Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers demanding a trade. We'll see what happens there. Supposedly they don't want to trade him, but he wants like $30 million a year. I don't know that he's worth that to them or to anyone probably at this stage of his career and just with the type of player he is. But regardless, leaning into that, him, obviously Dante Thornton, the rookie 4th round kind of physical specimen, who's had a nice touchdown catch in the preseason. He's risen up dramatically, but I think Trey Tucker is a player I've always been kind of high on. And then I took Adonai Mitchell for the Colts, who's had a very good summer, and Jalen Lane, the rookie wide receiver, very, very fast for the Commanders, who he was rested with their starters in their final preseason game. So it seems like a strong chance that he's going to be the return man and their 3rd receiver behind Debo and McLaurin, who are both approaching 30 years old. So those are some guys that I'm really liking clicking at the end of drafts. So that was my little segue into and it don't feel like you have to take them in this draft because, structurally do whatever you need to. But who are some names that in those last 3 or 4 rounds at this point in the cycle you are exceptionally high on? We'll start with you, Steve.
Well, that's a great timing because we're about to find that. I'm about to see if I get him as it's my pick next. But he's had great so far in the preseason. He's been very productive. He's probably going to start as a wide receiver 4, but that's such a shaky wide receiver room, and that is the Buffalo Bills. And I'll me some Elijah Moore as I'm taking him now to finish my team here. Reports have been good. He's been active. He's had some receptions. He's been involved, and obviously they brought him over because I believe they do plan to use him. And with no real alpha receiver on that team, I mean, Shakir obviously when healthy is a safe floor, but I think Elijah Moore has some potential at a YOLO 20th round pick to maybe have some usable weeks for you for the team, at some throughout the course of the season.
Like a really late dart throw that I don't really see even get drafted at all. And since he hopped in and asked a question in our lobby, I want to give Big Draft Energy a shout out because this is a guy that he kind of put on my radar a couple of weeks ago. I certainly don't have a lot, like maybe 3 or 4%. I really like Effin Chisholm for New England. Like he's a guy who probably will start out as a wide receiver 4. He's just had an awesome preseason. He's still not a guy that typically even gets drafted. Like I feel like this is a pretty decent room that we're in, and he didn't even get, he wasn't even drafted here either. It's probably 1 out of 10 drafts that I even see him drafted. He's a guy that I feel like I've been taking some shots on in the last couple of weeks in the 20th round. What about you, Mike? You got anybody really off the board that you like outside of Lane?
Yeah, Lane is probably the main one that I don't think many people touch. A guy I took last night, it might have been in the one that we drafted, was Chris Brooks for the Packers. Marshawn Lynch cannot seem to stay on the field, or Marshawn Lloyd cannot seem to stay on the field at all for the Packers. Just, he had like a 40-some yard catch in the preseason, looked great. It's the same. It's that hamstring. So it seems like it's like a chronic thing that's not going away. Josh Jacobs, obviously he's like big time workhorse. But then after that, Chris Brooks started over Emmanuel Wilson. Or I guess Jacobs played like the first series, but then it was Brooks before Wilson. And I don't think, Wilson occasionally gets drafted, but Brooks is like never drafted. So he's a guy that's kind of popped on my radar just in the last couple days. I kind of have been dismissing him, but it's the running back position. We see it all the time in DFS, right? Where it's like you're going to have names that we're discussing and that are like chalk in like 3 or 4 weeks that are totally off our radar. So like Brooks is a guy who strong offense that likes to lean on the run. And really it's like, what is he? A Josh Jacobs ankle turn away from like maybe a 60-70% touch share. So it feels weird because I also could see him like never scoring more than 5 points in a game all season. But just when I'm thinking through things or I build a certain way, he's a name that I've scrolled way down for a couple times. Yeah,
I like it.
And then the guy I took last in this draft, Jalen McMillan. I got him at pick 240, the very last pick of the draft. Was selected, anywhere from the 130. I think his ADP was as high as like 136 at one point, down to like 160, 170 range for most of the draft season. Obviously, that scary neck injury. So he's on injured reserve. They put him on the 53-man roster first and then placed him on injured reserve, which allows him to return. He'll miss at least 4 weeks. They have a week 9 bye, so the talk is he could be held out like kind of through that. But like if you look at his season last year, he really didn't contribute until – there he goes again. He really didn't contribute until the end of the season, but he had a great stretch last 5 weeks. And there's a lot of season to go. So you look at those last round picks, can they give you 4 or 5 usable weeks? And he's the type of guy we've literally seen him in that exact scenario do it. So, he kind of fit on that this roster as well, just because of I started off with 5 receivers. So I'm really strong there early in the season. And then I kind of pushed it off, addressed all the other positions. And then I took 4 straight at the end. So it's like, it might not be the deepest position. So like later, as you get later in the season, if one of those main guys gets hurt, getting a little spark there could help. And also I have Evans on the team as well. So it provides a little backup insurance for a couple of weeks if Evans deals with anything. And also both of them could kind of, if Emeka Egbuka hits a rookie wall or gets hurt late in the season, they both could kind of stand to benefit. So, those are 2 guys that specifically at this point in the draft cycle are kind of standing out for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I want to throw one more name to you real quick because his ADP is precipitously, I said that right, dropped. And I'm finding I'm getting him in the 17th and 18th rounds now, and that's Quentin Johnston for the Chargers. I mean, Trey Harris has not been trending very well throughout camp. And, behind Ladd McConkey, I know Keenan Allen's back, but Quentin Johnston was much higher in his ADP, even initially after Keenan Allen was going to be there. I know he got the concussion, of course, but all reports are that he's back practicing and he's back inactive, probably going to start the season. So I feel he's based on where he is now, is a good spot if you can get him that late.
Sorry, who was the name? I stepped away.
Quentin Johnston.
Quentin Johnston, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, Maximus with you on that one too. I think certainly on a roster like yours, where he's like your wide receiver 8 or 7 or 8, like he's a guy that, again, we've seen with some spike weeks that can give you usable weeks, and he's not to me, he's not a guy I want as my wide receiver 5. I don't want to be counting on him a decent amount of time, but I think if you're if he's really like your last depth piece at wide receiver, I think that's a spot that I really like taking shots on. Honestly, Mike, same with Jalen McMillan. Like, he's a guy that I love taking shots on now that he's in the 19th and 20th round as well, for the same reason. Like, he's a guy that can give you usable weeks down the stretch. QJ is the guy who could give you usable weeks, honestly, right out of the gate. His biggest problem is he's can't really catch, which is sort of a requirement of the wide receiver position.
Details. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing too, with the earlier discussion on these players that are rising. You've got players dropping on the other end that you are getting later than you ever could have earlier in the draft cycle. So you're getting some players a lot cheaper. You're avoiding some players. You're able to avoid some players who have had their value tanked. So that's, those are other reasons why my general approach is not to be scared off as some of these guys rise. It's more to evaluate the specific situations. You've got the board up. Max, do you want to talk about Maximus? Do you want to talk about your roster quick?
Okay. So we started.
Can you just pull it up, and just so the listeners on like the podcast feed can just read through?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have a 3-5-9-3 build. Quarterbacks: Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Flacco. So I got some old school, and hopefully mixed with my main guy who is ready to surge with Trevor. Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren, Jordan Mason, Austin Eckler, and Tajay Spears. So kind of combining that Tennessee running back room there. So 5 running backs in this case. Wide receiver room: Brian Thomas Jr., A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Travis Hunter, Jaden Higgins, Cedric Tillman, De'Ami Brown, Quentin Johnston, and Elijah Moore. And then my tight end room was George Kittle, Zach Ertz, and Mike Johnson's favorite, Elijah Arroyo, finishing out the tight end room there.
Yeah, and you even had a good little Spanish accent on Arroyo as well.
Arroyo.
I can't do it well, but you did well there.
I have my moments.
Yeah, I like it. While Mike is attending to a sick child, I'll go StatATL. I went 3-6. Yeah, I went 3-6-8-3. Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, Tyler Shuck. Was really debating if I wanted to just take a shot and take another wide receiver over a third quarterback. I really wanted Anthony Richardson to just kind of shore up that Indy, QB room, but he went 1 or 2 picks before me in the 19th round. He's a guy that typically has fallen a lot. Running back Chase Brown is kind of like an anchor. ETN and Bigsby, both from Jacksonville. Jerome Ford, Sean Tucker, Roshan Johnson. Wide receiver Nico Collins, Marvin Harrison, Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, Rashad Bateman, Josh Palmer, Darius Slayton. And then tight end TJ Hawkinson, Brenton Strange, and Juwan Johnson. And then let's do Mike's.
Sure.
I'm here, but I want you guys to evaluate it. Tell me what you think.
All right.
You want to read it off, or you want me to, Steve?
I can read it off. I'll let you comment. Bo Nix and Cam Ward are the quarterbacks. Excuse me. Running back room, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, Will Shipley, and Woody Marks. And then we have at wide receiver, the Alpha, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore, Trey Tucker, Adonai Mitchell, Jalen Lane, and Jalen McMillan. A lot of Jalen's going on. And then at the tight end spot, Colston Loveland, Kyle Pitts, and Chig Okonkwo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind taking first shot at an eval here. Structure-wise, I think it's solid. I don't think you needed a third quarterback, so I like that you stuck with just Nix and Ward. Wide receiver room, I think, is really strong, despite the fact that you waited so long to take your 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th wide receivers. I really like that. I feel like you balanced that well. One of the things I think we talked about a little bit last year more, Mike, was on unique pairings. And I think this is a really awesome wide receiver room in terms of unique pairings with Jamar Chase and then Evans and JSN, both guys who are typically going, on the other side of the board. So pulling up both of them, I think, is pretty uncommon. So I think it gives you a nice start there. Tight end room, Loveland, Pitts, Chig. I like it. You've got some good depth there. You've got some, some question marks, obviously. Colston Loveland, a rookie, some strong things out of camp from him. I like the correlation with Chig and Cam Ward. Kyle Pitts, a guy personally, I don't know that I have maybe more than 1 or 2 shares with, and they're both
leave.
Yeah, I'm not on the Kyle Pitts train.
Kyle Pitts he's the DFS equivalent of the guy that you play and you're playing. Like Mike Evans 3 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, when it was we'd play him all year and he just wouldn't, it was Brady's last year. And then all of a sudden, week 17, he had a 50-point game or something.
But Mike Evans is good. This is Kyle Pitts we're talking about.
Best quarterback of his career. No wide receiver 2. Healthy. He's only 24 years old. 12th round.
Mike, I don't hate it. It's just, it's just not.
It's not for you. It's an acquired
stats guys and the Mike guys. He's not a stats guy.
It's an acquired taste.
It's an acquired taste.
You've got to be a little bit of a glutton. So Mad Sox says Ray over Pitts. To each their own. Their own.
I'll die on
that. I don't disagree. Ray in the 20th or Pitts in the 12th or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. To me, again, I don't want to get player takey. I think your biggest question mark room is running back. You've got some early season guys. DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins. I think are both going to likely start the season as starters and get the lion's share of carries. Montgomery, obviously, one injury away from being a top 5 running back. Ramondre Stevenson, I think, similar. I think he's a guy that I find myself taking a lot as my running back 4 or 5. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, player takey. I think TreVeyon Henderson's really going to eat into that workload and early. And then you've got some upside pieces in Shipley and Marks, who are guys that I don't mind either. To me, it's early, the running back room for me is fine. You've got decent depth and you've got 6 of them. To me, that's the weakest spot. And I don't know that it's a weak roster. So I think it's a pretty good build. Steve, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'll go down the list. Love the quarterbacks for this format. They both have strong arms. They both have rushing ability, which is good with the drafters, this cumulative scoring. And they're both, obviously Cam Ward's a rookie, but they both have, Bo Nix really came on toward the end of last season. I think that continues with Peyton. What a value you got on DeAndre Swift. You kind of had to take him at 72nd, and his ADP is 55. So great value there. I like the running back room for the most part. Dobbins, a little correlation there. And he'll be, especially early in the season, I think they'll be working Harvey in, and Dobbins is kind of the foundation maybe early on. I like Shipley where he's at. Your wide receiver room is great, sir. You got 5 wide receiver ones is what I call them to start your wide receiver group. They are the focal points of their wide receiver cores of their offenses, and good offenses, at least Cincinnati and Tampa most likely will be. Well, Denver too. And then, I would say if there was probably the tight ends, although I'll die on the hill with you with Kyle Pitts. I do have a little bit more than Billy does of Kyle Pitts kind of sprinkled in on some teams this season. I do see the potential with the Mooney situation, and it'll be interesting with the offensive line, though. I know the Falcons have had some offensive line injuries of recent times, but maybe that even plays better for Pitts to kind of safety blanket for Penix. But overall, I definitely like the team. 2693 is a classic build that I like. My best team, my 17th place team last season was a 2693. So overall, solid team in my opinion.
Nice.
I can't see you.
Mike is stepping away. Mike, anything else you want to wrap? Or you want to give any comments or
no?
Obviously, we got a final price drop on the site.
Yeah, we've got. If anyone's looking to check us out or kind of hopping in the best ball streets, I don't think you can beat $19 for our best ball basics package. We'll get you all our rankings. We get you all the written content. You can catch up on all our team previews and whatnot. We do have a fantasy draft guide this year that is also $19. You can get that if you want to prepare for your season-long leagues, or for $49 Best Ball Plus subscription. That gets you all the best ball basics stuff, plus the fantasy draft guide, plus all of our premium podcasts and training sessions behind the paywall type stuff and Discord access. So, that's basically it. I'm going to try to get us out of here under an hour and get to it with we're cranking things out as we get down the stretch here of the off season. So check us out, oneweekseason.com. Again, everything free week 1 for our DFS product. Thank you Stat/Billy. Thank you Maximus/Steve. We will see you guys on Twitter and in the Discord and in the draft rooms. Peace.
1 week season.